Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I am Edrica Richardson, Dr. E to some of you. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and now an author. I'm so excited to be here with my co-author who will introduce herself in a second, Dr. Ilene Cohen, because today is our publication day for This Isn't Working for Me. I'm a therapist, an aunt, and just a enthusiast about making all of our relationships in our lives better. So I'm so excited to be co-authoring this book with my very good and long-term friend, Ilene.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Ilene, also a licensed marriage and family therapist and author. I've been writing a while and have many blogs and books out, but I'm very excited about this one because I got to work with Dr. E on it, and I think it's very special. And I'm just looking forward to tell you more about it today.
Yeah. So, where do we start?
So, well, the book, it's for anybody that is in a relationship with someone. It doesn't have to be romantic. It's to strengthen, maybe your relationship with your mother-in-law, your parents, a sibling, a coworker, and then, of
Yourself.
course, yourself, definitely is one of those. So it's filled with tons of activities, quizzes, as a way to apply what you're learning into your everyday life, because we're very hands-on with our clients as far as working with them in session and then giving them things to do outside of session to apply what it is that they're learning. And our book has stages in it and steps that each kind of follow each other towards having these better relationships.
I think what I love most about our book is just like you were saying, it's so practical and relatable that anyone who picks it up, they can use it and find something in This Isn't Working for Me that will apply to them. And so we wanted to make this book fun as well too, so that when you are developing a better relationship throughout the course of your life, you have a chance to pick it up at any time and go back and refer to something that you did in it before and say, wow, look also how much I've grown in my relationships over the years. Because one thing we know is that relationships are a lifelong journey. And so This Isn't Working for Me is just one of those tools you can use to make sure that you continue to have the best relationship throughout the course of your life.
Right. That's so true. So I think we have some questions that we're supposed to open up to and answer. So this one, do you want to take it on, Dr. E?
Sure. Are there any common patterns or behaviors that tend to sabotage relationship? Yes. One of the first ones is that there's a lack of communication and understanding. I want to add that part to it too, because what a lot of people don't realize is that if you're not talking about what's happening, then that leads to a lot of expectations that are going unmet, and that can lead to sabotaging a relationship. Or maybe if the person's communicating with you and you think you know what they said, that can lead to misunderstandings in that level of connection. Other things, other common behaviors that we tend to see sabotage relationships are those expectations, right? So some of us don't even talk about the expectations we have in relationships that will add to it. As well as letting other people be too much in our relationships. What we mean by that is that you have to know what exactly is the goal of the relationship. And let's talk about like in-laws. If too much of them are in your relationship with your partner, that can really affect what's happening within that original system. And so people can be helpful, but just knowing when to put boundaries in place with your kids, with your external family, with yourself, to make sure that any relationship in your life goes well. And so I'll leave it at that.
Well, those are some great ones. Something else that we talk about extensively in the book is how our relationship patterns from our families of origin impact our relationships today. So if we formed a certain relationship with maybe our parents, say, for example, you were the one that was the mediator in your family and was the one that stepped in to keep the peace, you might be utilizing that same pattern of behaviors in your romantic relationships, your friendships with your child. So whenever there's a conflict or there's an issue, you might just be doing what you need to in that situation to calm things down, to mediate, even though it might not be what's useful to the relationship in the long run. So that could be sabotaging your relationship unknowingly. So one thing to do is to really try, which in our book we do, is to understand what's my part in these patterns. What am I doing that could be sabotaging my relationships? And it might not look so bad, like trying to keep the peace or, fixing doesn't really sound so bad on the outside, but it could be detrimental to others, and it could be more harmful down the road for your relationships.
Ooh. You want to take that one first?
Sure. How can I be self-aware about the ways I'm contributing to an unhealthy relationship dynamic? So this self-awareness is very important. This is something that is really at the core of our book, is how do we get to know ourselves better? Shift the focus from others, which we tend to do, especially when a relationship's tense or isn't working. We're so aware what the other person's doing wrong. They're right in front of us. We can see that clearly. We're not so clear on what we're doing. So part of the self-awareness piece is really just slowing down and observing, and shifting that focus from others to self, and especially in conflictual times. What is it that I do in response to, my mother when we're in this pattern? What is my triggers? So through the book is that we have that the observational piece, but also asking ourselves questions. What is it that I tend to do? And is it useful or is it not useful? So I think a main thing is really just slowing down and shifting the focus on us versus others, and being observational, especially in those triggered and more tense moments.
Yeah, I think it's constantly being aware of your presence and the presence around you. And that's something we definitely talk a lot about in our book. What does it mean to have a self? And how is that self constantly evolving as things go on? Because we do know that you're going to evolve and change. So being self-aware is a lifelong pattern, but knowing what to look out for and what those triggers may be, so that your sense of self continues to create a strong relationship with you and know what your core values are. So a lot of times we can sometimes forget that who we are starts out with us identifying what is important to us. And so we have a whole chapter on that, which is defining yourself. That's a whole stage, because we know that if you're going to work at any relationship in your life, the most important relationship, and it all starts with you. So that is definitely something to be constantly aware of. How are you showing up? How are you triggered around other people? How are you even happy around others? Like all of those different emotions that you may feel. And as you observe yourself in your life, that is, like Dr. Ilene said, that's a huge asset to you.
Right. Well said.
Oh, good question. As a clinician, how do I use this book with my clients? I think one of the things that we wanted to make sure and do in the book, like Ilene said, was to have different activities and exercises so that it can be very practical. So a clinician can use this book by looking at the different tools in there and asking either the client some of those questions to draw out more information, or assigning one of those activities that they can process for homework and use after the fact. Because one of the things we wanted this book to be is not something you'd pick up one time, that you'd want to go back and use as a reference guide as you evolve throughout the stages of your life. And so as a clinician, not only could it be helpful for you and your client to read together, to give them as an assignment for homework on their own. There are certain chapters in it depending on what you and your client are working on at that moment. Like for instance, tips and tools for effective communication, right? We know that's something we see not only a lot of times with couples, but we see that a lot of times with family dynamics. Or in our chapter, we're talking about how do we learn to be more vulnerable and what that looks like. There's an activity in there about attachment that would be very helpful for somebody understanding what that looks like, especially when dealing with their family of origin. Or even just knowing what your family patterns are by understanding what your genogram looks like. So there are different tools in there that any person in an everyday situation can use that will be really helpful for clinicians, as well as to help you hone in on your own skills as you work on your relationships, even with your clients of origin, and which clients you may be picking and why. And so it goes for both a personal and a professional.
Right. I'm going to second that, where for clinicians, it's important for us, I think, to work on ourselves. I know, Dr. You've done extensive research and work on your family of origin stuff, myself as well, which helps us understand what people are up against as far as working on themselves and their family relationships and their close relationships, but also helps us connect to our clients in a more personal level. It's not that hierarchy, it's more of we're just two people relating and we're working through the difficulty of being human in relationships. I've been actually using the book with some of my clients, especially couples, and I always ask if they're readers or if they want to, how extensive, right. We could go chapter by chapter, right. Or if someone's not such a big reader and we talk about something specific, like maybe their negative interactional patterns, I'll send them the clip from, that area where you track the interactional pattern, and then there's some questions at the end and they can, work on it, and then they come back and we talk about it. So it's been useful in my own practice as far as utilizing with clients, and it gives us something to work towards, because some clients, as you know, they love having goals, they like something tangible. And some, they work on their own and then they come back, or some we will go through some questions together, and it helps just give us something to work towards. And I find it very interesting.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because there is one, as I've been doing some speaking engagements lately, that there's a part we wrote about that talked about what are the benefits of being in a relationship with you, right? So that's a question I pose to people. And it's amazing that when you ask somebody that question, a lot of times they're like, what do you mean? Because we sometimes want others to see that value, but have you sat down and asked yourself, what are the benefits of being in a relationship with you? Whether that's being in a relationship with you as maybe you're a sibling, maybe that's a partner, maybe that's a parent. That is a really good question to just acknowledge, so that when you are working on your relationships, you could see how to use that to not only grow those relationships, but also kind of tweak some things that you may not be doing so well. So I think This Isn't Working For Me is a great guide for anybody who wants better relationships.
Right. There's another question. You want me to take it, or?
Sure, go ahead.
This is the last one. So what are some common misconceptions or myths about relationships that you would like to debunk? Well, a big one, especially I'm romantic, but actually I see in families as well, is that we always have to be on the same page. We always have to be thinking the same in order to get along. But we're all human, we're all different, we all have our own, some that come from our family, but as Edrica was saying earlier, our own, like, we learn about our own core values, what's important to us. And that might be the same and might differ from others. So I think something we do actually talk about in the book with the misconception of, we always have to be on the same page, is it's okay to think differently about things. And your relationships are going to have conflict. So it's about, how do we manage those? How do we do that without thinking one needs to give in to the other, or that we have to change the other person's mind? How do we be in relation knowing that we have different ideas. So that's a common, a big one there. What do you have any?
The quick one I want to add before we run out of time is the idea that wherever I came from is going to follow me throughout the rest of my life. And so one of the things we want to make sure you understand is that even when you get information on your family patterns and family of origin, that does not have to be the story you tell or the story of the relationships of your life. And so what the good thing about this is it working for me will help you figure out how those family patterns early on, that family of origin story was a part of you, but how also you learning more about yourself and your relationship with that, you can figure out what you want to have said for the next generation and how to change things for the better. And just remember that if it isn't working for you, this book will help you figure out how to make those changes in a healthy way so that you can have more lifelong relationships.
Right. I agree.
So don't forget to order it. There's a link at the bottom of the screen, as well as there is a QR code. Go ahead and take your phones out, send it to somebody else. Buy two. If you're in a good relationship with somebody, buy one for you and somebody else you love.
Right. I agree with that.
We've all said, this isn't working for me.
Right. Or I'm done. For sure. Well, thank you. I appreciate. Nice always seeing you, Dr. E, and thank you, the audience, for joining us today.
Yes.